Thanks very much for coming. It's one of many events this week. It's been going really well, and so thanks for coming along. Obviously, we are most excited about community-led tourism, since it's what we've been getting into the guts of over the last little while. So yeah, in terms of this evening's event, I think we're going to split it kind of into two. So we're going to just have some fairly brief presentations, which I'll share just now. Sarah, I think, is going to give us a bit of a general background on community-led tourism and what it is, where it came from, and we have representatives from the two demonstration projects, Brechin and Girvan, who are going to give us an update on how things were from their perspective. So I'm then going to open up the floor just for anybody to ask any clarification questions about the whole programme and either of those demonstration areas and what's been happening, because it's been busy and it's accelerating at a great rate of knots, as Chris will attest. And then we're the second part of the evening will be myself. So we are doing, Community Enterprises doing the impact assessment for community-led tourism. And we had a baseline report last year, and we are about 2/3 of the way through the research that's trying to ask very similar questions. And so I'll give you some feeling about how things have changed since the baseline and then since the research that's currently live at the moment. And again, just give opportunities to ask some questions about the impact, the difference it's made. Some of those findings are not finished yet, but have been a little bit surprising. So just again, opening up opportunities there. And the last thing I'll say just before I pass to Sarah is that my approach to this is to try and minimize the speeches as much as possible. I think you do need to get your brains stimulated and get some feeling about what this is and what the purpose of it is. But I am going to open up quite a lot of space for people to debate and question. I've got a list of possible questions at the end if we do struggle. But if you are quiet and shy, then we're going to have a very short session. So be prepared for asking lots of questions and debating with each other about this. So thanks, folks. So I'll pass over to you, Sarah, just to do an introduction.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to do this quite quickly because I think quite a few of you have been to these sessions and have been involved. For us, community-led tourism has become a really important part of the work that we've been doing because of the work that we do with social enterprises. But we recognise that when we talk community, that goes far beyond the social enterprises that we have connections with, and we're talking about a broad community. We're talking about residents, we're talking about private sector, third sector, public sector. We're talking about everybody within that community. I think that where this came from was there was a recognition. I'm going to put a light on because I've just realised I'm sitting in the dark. There we go. There's a recognition that community tourism initiatives across the country were all very, very different, and some of them were working and have been around for a very long time and working really well and had quite a lot of support. Others had no support and were struggling a little bit, and we really wanted to examine that and explore what the opportunities were for community-led tourism in Scotland, where its place is on the tourism landscape, the importance of it, to tell that story a little bit, because it goes beyond tourism. I think everybody in this room will recognise that, and certainly when we hear from the two groups today, you'll see that it goes far beyond tourism. But we also wanted to, I think a key part of this project is about sharing with our national partners what we need to do to support and empower communities to take a leadership role in their tourism offer. For whatever that might be for that community. It all looks very different in every single community across Scotland, and this is very much about a grassroots approach and not a top-down approach. We really want to be in a situation where communities are empowered and have a voice at a national level as well, and they're valued and respected and recognised. That's a very quick overview. I think that I don't think I need to go into it much more, because I think that it's going to become very clear what the two pilots have done, what they've been involved with, and the journey that they've taken, as we hear from Rachel and Zanne. So, but I'm around and happy to answer any questions at all. Pass back to you, Douglas.
That's smashing. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks very much. And I think we're going to pass to Zanne from Girvan first.
Brilliant, thank you. Am I good to share my screen?
Yes, I think so. Linda will need to maybe make you co.
Yeah, I think I can't share because you're sharing.
Ah, right.
Then we pop-up box just. Thank you. So hopefully you can all see that. So I thought I'd just give you a little overview of the things that we've been doing in Girvan, and I've divided this into sort of 3 strands. There's 3 approaches that we've taken when we've been thinking about projects. And the first is to do with information and promotion around Girvan, what Girvan has to offer, how you can find out what Girvan has to offer, promoting the town itself. The second strand is around regeneration and refurbishment. So slightly longer term projects, thinking about like how the high street operates, what buildings can be used for, what bigger projects we can start thinking about that would regenerate both the economy and the physical geographical layout of the town. And the third is sort of, I'm calling it beautification, I didn't really know what else to call it, or sort of adding interest. So these are the 3 strands that we went down when we were looking at which projects to prioritise. And our projects have included a range of short-term and long-term visions, lower, higher cost projects, so that we have a sense of longevity and sustainability to the project, but we also have some quick fixes for sort of instant changes, if you like. So we're seeing things happening quite quickly, but we also have a vision, for the next 5-10 years. So I thought I'd highlight 3 of the projects specifically that fall into these categories for you. So the biggest project that we've undertaken is a digital media project, and that falls under our promotion and information strand. So we commissioned a new brand workbook for Girvan. We worked with Creo Design, who came up with the slogan, "Go Girvan, Explore, Escape, Experience." And they created a new logo for us, new colorways, fonts, all of these sorts of things that we can draw on in the future so that we can tie our vision together into this brand. We have new social medias that have that branding on them and that sort of carry the tone and the colors and everything through it. But importantly as well, they're sort of sparkly, brand new, sort of a little bit corporate, but also with a very much a community underfeel to it. So people get a sense of what's happening on the ground in Girvan and what the community is like, but also what we have to offer on a bigger scale. Digital media was a big part of that project. So we've had promotional videos made. We've had one made so far. We've another one coming in the summer, and new photography. And excitingly, a new website is part of that project as well. So that's launching next week on the 31st of March. And we were going to go for the 1st of April, but somebody pointed out it's April Fool's Day. It's probably not a best date to do it. So Thursday, the 31st of March, our new website will launch, and that is going to be your go-to place for anything that you want to find out if you're a visitor to Girvan. So it has accommodation, it has places to eat, it has things to do, it has a bit of history about the town, and it gives you a real feel about the community on that aspect as well, who's been involved in this project, and sort of community events that are going on and so forth as well. Some of the bigger projects that we've been thinking about and that we've started to work towards include an Ailsa Craig project. So Girvan obviously sits on the Firth of Clyde, and Ailsa Craig is right there in front of us. And we want to kind of become known as the gateway to Ailsa Craig. So it's a vision for us in the future is that we work towards, we're going to commission a feasibility study to see how possible it is to think about building a new interpretation centre, for example, to celebrate our connection with Ailsa Craig. So this is one of those bigger, longer term, much more expensive projects, but something that we've been able to undertake as part of this pilot. And something that falls under the beautification is banners. So a really simple, effective way for us to get our branding out there was to have banners along the prom. But more than that, it's to add interest to the local area. So we're hoping that by positioning them where we would like them to be, we have cars driving along passers-by that come through off the Cairnryan ferry up to Glasgow. They see the banners. It gets a bit, gets into your head like something exciting over there. You might want to stop, pull over, just adds a little bit of interest and kind of makes the area feel a bit more appealing. So those are just some examples, but we have other projects going on too. We've supported a range of existing events within the town that local community groups put on, which draw visitors in. We've created new events. So my baby at the moment is Tatty Fest. So Girvan is famous for the Ayrshire Epicure Tatty. And we're putting on a Tatty Fest in June, where we're going to celebrate the humble potato, which has everything from, we've commissioned a poem from the Scottish Poetry Library, so we have cultural, we have heritage linked to it, fun and games, and also eating a lot of potatoes is hopefully the plan for that. We commissioned an accommodation scoping study so we could figure out what Girvan has to offer and where we might go with that in the future. So another long-term vision for Girvan. A heritage walking trail. We've bought giant games for the promenade. We've refurbished the tourist information point and so forth. So you can see that these all fall into those strands that we first started out thinking about. And I just wanted to briefly highlight something that Sarah had brought up there. I put together just a really quick slide just to show you that this small project that we started with has really blossomed, and these are all of the different stakeholders and community groups that we've been working with. In fact, I don't even think it's all of them. I think I probably missed a few off there, but you can see from just this small vision that we've had how much it's taken on energy, and how many groups we've become associated with, and how many groups have become embedded within our group and so forth. So it's really kind of exciting to see all this happen and to make all of these connections across the community. So that's me.
That's great, Zanne, thank you. I think if it's okay with everything, everyone, I'm going to let Rachel talk about Brechin, and then we will open up for questions after that.
Thank you very much, Douglas. So you're going to allow me to click on my slides? Brilliant. Okay, and sorry, can you just let me know how I move to the next slide on Zoom?
Linda, can you make Rachel a host?
You'll need to, Douglas, if you've got the slides up, it'll need to be you that does it. So Rachel, you just let me know when you want to change.
Right, you need to just wink at me, Rachel.
I'll wink. I'll wave a hand. How's that?
Right, perfect.
Good. That takes away a lot of the stress of deciding when to change. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Just a quick slide showing our logo. Like Zanne, we're very can I have the next slide? Sorry, Douglas, thank you. Like Zanne, like it in Girvan, we are looking at beautifying our town. So beautiful Brechin, we have chosen 7 locations for planters in Brechin at entrances and key sites. And we've persuaded 7 businesses and organisations to adopt or to take on the maintenance and planting. We're obviously going to be funding some of the planting and maintenance ourselves, but looking at sustainability to continue in this project, we really do want to involve the community. This is what it's all about, to get everybody to feel that they are on board. They're not just planters that have been placed there by a group about tourism. They're going to be absolutely involved. So we haven't got these planted up yet, but we have the planters ordered, and these will be started in the spring. And as I say, not only will impactful floral displays be created, but also several local business and organisations are now involved directly in one aspect of community-led tourism, including pupils from the local high school. And we have one of our steering group members here today, Ruby, who is going to help with this project. Next slide, please, Douglas.
I'm clicking.
We're clicking. Should be photos.
Sorry.
Yeah. Just to give you a quick view of some of the sites that we chose. We have got Blacks Brechin, who is one of our steering group members. They are happy to take on and adopt planters down one of the streets in Brechin. That's on the left-hand side of the screen. And then one of the other sites coming into Brechin from Arbroath, a lovely old bridge, a very historic bridge. Another welcoming planter will be placed there. And then finally, the slide on the right is showing the entrance from the A90, and there will be a planter there. So there's just some of the few sites which have been chosen. Next slide, please. Right, the next project you may have seen on social media for us is called intriguingly The Wolf, the Salmon and the Centre. And these are 3 modern style Pictish stones. We commissioned these from Angus company Maniki Rock Art. They've been designed by specialists in Pictish art, members of the Pictish Art Society mostly, and have been crafted by hand by trained sculptors. They've actually now just been finished, which is absolutely fantastic. They're going to be installed in 2 of Brechin's public parks for local people and for visitors to enjoy. Now, a Facebook page was created by Monique Rock Art and has greatly raised the profile of Brechin community-led tourism. The project has been featured on STV News and has attracted the notice of Angus Council, who have match funded the cost of the stones from the town centre funding. And new interpretation boards and a Pictish trail will complete the interpretation. Next slide, please, Douglas. This is one of the designs which was created by Monique Rock Art, showing very traditional Pictish stone designs. However, in these, they have very cleverly hidden, I'm not sure you can see it in this one, but there's little mice for people to find. There's also all sorts of fun with the interlace, where the interlace maybe doesn't quite work, which is actually completely true of ancient Pictish stones. So what they've done is they've done it with a new twist. They look Pictish, but they are not. And there will be opportunities for us to have interpretation boards which will talk about the Pictish style, but also the connection with Brechin. The names which have been chosen, the wolf is linked to the White Catterton site, which is nearby. The salmon is linked to the South Esk, which runs past Brechin. And the centre, well, I don't know there's a particular design for the centre exactly, but I loved it because one of the stones are going is near where there used to be a stable. So rather a nice tie-in. Next slide, please. It's another similar project called Brechin Stories in Stone, and this has been inspired by the rural, by applying for funding for Scotland Stories. We have encouraged local schools to visit local heritage sites and compile a portfolio of illustrations to celebrate Scotland's Year of Stories, which is of course this year. Their pupils' ideas are to be made into a series of 6 stone carvings by Brechin stonemason Alistair Anderson, and they'll be sited around a local park, the Inch Park, for which we are doing a feasibility study. And this has several pluses. Young people are being encouraged to support their local heritage sites, the castle, the cathedral and the museum, all of which have been closed or up for sale in the last couple of years. So we're hoping that this will encourage people to go and support some of their local tourist attractions, and also to bring in tourists to the area. The good thing about this as well is that the work of the pupils will be preserved for posterity and form a tourist attraction in one of Brechin's green spaces. And they hopefully will be encouraging people to come and look at them, because it will be like some of these projects where you've involved young people. They like to come back over the years to show their families what they've been doing. Next slide, please. This is actually one of the original Pictish stones being carved, not Ali Anderson, because Ali hasn't yet got the designs from the school children because of COVID restrictions, meaning that the museum and quite a number of the other places they were trying to visit were closed. But this is just showing the process taking place. Next slide, please. Brechin promotional video. Now, we have created a brief for a promotional video, and it's designed for social media use. And we've awarded the contract to a young filmmaker. The only difficult about that is that he is often away filming other things, which is good for him, but it's made it a slightly longer process. But this is fine because we're now able to look at the spring for filming a lot of the sites. He is involved with Game of Thrones, so quite high up in the general idea of filming. So this is for improving Brechin's presence on social media, and it will open up the town to a new market aside from those who are already familiar with the area. The combined elements will present Brechin as a previously undiscovered tourism offering. This is why we're different from Girvan, and will introduce the natural heritage and business elements of the town to a new audience. Can I have the next slide, please? And this is a drone footage, actually, which we're very lucky to be given by Craig Murray, who's a local photographer who is not necessarily involved in the steering group, but it's just showing how we're drawing people from out with the steering group who all know about hopefully what is going on in the town. What you see in front of you was the cathedral and the round tower. Next slide, please. And the feasibility study for the Inch, this is another exciting development where Crawford Architecture will undertake the feasibility study for the Inch Park and disused visitor centre. This is a very attractive park but it still needs a little bit more beautification. The focus will be on renewed use of an attractive open space with traditional elements such as the town's 1950s paddling pool and the 1980s leisure centre. Additional funding of £8,000 was secured from Wards for All for this, so we're very pleased with that draw into our funding. And the Inch Park is situated in Brechin East, which is historically an area which has not had the socio-economic benefits enjoyed by other parts of town. The park itself have been greatly improved by the successful establishment of the River South Esk flood prevention scheme, which previously meant that there was no development and no housing sales possible there at all. And as such, it has the potential not only to add value to the quality of residents' lives, but also to become a tourist attraction. Can I have the next slide, please? This is members of the steering group enjoying an afternoon photo shoot at the Inch Park, which will be the subject of that feasibility study. Next slide, please. And finally, production of new signage and banners, similar again to what Zanne is doing at Girvan. We're rewriting and reprinting 3 double-sided boards at 3 key sites. These date from the 1990s and they're perfectly good condition. They just require a bit more of updating and a bit of reprinting. We also are creating interpretation boards for the new Pictish stones, which I mentioned earlier, and pull-up banners for use at promotional events and in empty shop windows. We're about to have our first public engagement event on Saturday, so these will be in use then. And we feel that obviously the refurbishment of the signs and use of the banners in shop windows will smarten up the town and provide new and updated information for locals and visitors. And publicity around community-led tourism will increase awareness of this key concept, which puts the power to lead in tourism in the hands of the community. Could I have the final slide, please, which just is more symbolic than anything else, just pointing to various visitor attractions in Brechin. I have to put up my hand here and admit that we weren't responsible for the refurbishment, although we really wanted to be, but we discovered that having decided that we wanted this as one of our projects, that suddenly some painter organised by the council came and redid them, and we were absolutely amazed and we were delighted. So it means that we have more money to spend on other things, and again money came from the council to our own funds for the further development of this signage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rach, that's brilliant. Okay, I'm just going to open up the floor for any questions to Rachel, Zanne or Sarah, or Chris for that matter, because Chris at Creetown, we really have to say, has been hugely involved in supporting and coordinating and encouraging this work, which has been amazing. And I'll just say really briefly, when I went out to see the group originally less than a year ago, it was full of passion and lots of people, but kind of lots of ideas and no ideas and a bit kind of slightly not quite sure where things were going. And you know, a year's not a long period of time, and I personally think it's absolutely astonishing what these two groups have achieved in that time, as you can see from that. And I mean, I know it's easy to say that, and one should say that at an event like this, but I mean, we meet lots and lots of groups, and I would say I'm genuinely amazed by what's been achieved. So it's been really good. So I'm just going to open up the floor. I'm just going to stay in the whole floor for this, just for any questions for any of those folks. I think when I'll do something around the impact, I'm going to ask Linda to split people into smaller groups so there's a wee bit better, if that's okay, if that's technically possible, Linda. She's nodding, thank you. So that'll give people a wee bit more opportunity to discuss things in smaller groups. But I think for the moment, I'm just going to stay in the bigger group. So I'll just open up for any questions, except Artemis. I don't know. Right, on you go, Artemis. Great to see you.
Hi there, Douglas. No, I'm just thinking, and all of this is really interesting, because obviously on Grassy we do try and do as much as we can in the community about tourism, tourism offerings, and it's just been very inspirational listening to what you've been up to in the 2 demonstration projects. I was just wondering, because everything on Grassy at the moment is reliant on volunteers, and that kind of does create quite a lot of barriers to what we can achieve. And how much are your projects using volunteers and relying on volunteer input?
Thanks, Artemis. Zanne and Rachel, one if you want to take that, or maybe both.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer in reference to Girvan. None of this would have happened without the volunteers. We rely massively on them, which I'm not particularly always comfortable with. I'm really grateful and respect the amount of work that they put in. But yeah, no, the volunteers are really, really important. But I know that Rachel feels the same, that if this is to be used as a model going forward for other communities, having a proper support, a project support role is intrinsic to the success of getting things done. That's made a real difference. Both Rachel and I came on, quite recently, really, in the grand scale of things. I started in October, so I've been here for 5 months, and that's when we started to see things moving, because I've been able to dedicate time to it. So there has to be a balance. We'll always need to have some volunteers, but I do think that, yeah, you need to make sure that it's not just solely focused and all the weight is not on their shoulders.
Yes, I would agree totally with you, Zanne. That's very much what's happened here in Brechin, and also all the steering group members are obviously all volunteers, and it's a lot for them to take on. I think one of our steering group said that it was great to know that, particularly with businesses, I mean, their businesses are keen to be on the steering group, but they're busy running their business. They don't necessarily have the time to come on and do other things. They're happy to have an input, but I think, yeah, absolutely, volunteers are essential, but also project support is really helpful.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And Norma, I'm going to take you, and then Ruby and Pauline. So Norma first.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Just picking up on that a little bit as well. It took us a long. I'm one of the steering group, and I was a volunteer on the project. It took a long time for the steering group to realise that additional project support was really necessary to drive things forward. So they felt that maybe the budget that we had, we shouldn't be spending it on a project worker, but thankfully the majority concurred that that would be a good thing, and things really did start to move after that. So yeah, absolutely support that. I wanted to ask Zanne about how long did it take for you to get so focused and specific on the three, you've got three key aims and things that you wanted to do? That seems like, I don't know if we quite got to that point, but it seems very focused and specific, and I just wondered how long it took to get to that point and how you managed it.
Thank you. I'm going to say that as a huge compliment. I'm going to say it was actually sort of a natural evolution. The steering group came up with the list of projects that they would like to do, and they prioritized them. And then when I came along, I looked at them and kind of realized that they fell into these different strands. And from that point, it was a sort of matter of which ones do we prioritize within those strands and which ones actually overlap with other strands as well. So it's not a neat category, but I'm the type of person that likes boxes, and I like to kind of organize things in that way. So it's been really helpful for me to sort of think in that respect, because I'm also, I wouldn't want to spend the entire project just on beautification, on superficial projects, and that, and I don't mean superficial in a demeaning way, but you know what I mean. I wanted to make sure there was a real mix of projects, not just focusing on beautification, not just focusing on regeneration and so forth. So very much a natural evolution, but also very much guided by my own sort of tendency to box things in a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Zanne. That's helpful. Thanks, Norma. Ruby.
Hi, I'm a new member of the Brechin area, Brechin community-led tourism group, and I was just wondering about what's actually happening with the Ailsa Craig project. I don't know whether I missed it, but what's you said you wanted to be known for the Ailsa Craig area, but I was wondering what's happening with it.
Yeah, I flew through that really fast. So we have set aside money, and we're going for additional funding to commission a feasibility study to find out what the potential is really to create a brand new interpretation centre, potentially out at the back of the Key Zone, which sits just in front of the beach, which gives you a beautiful shot of Ailsa Craig. And that interpretation centre would, talk about the heritage, the history of Ailsa Craig in terms of, its religious history as a refuge for Catholics during the Reformation, and its history with making curling stones with the granite, and also obviously now its history as being a bird sanctuary. So it has all these wonderful facets to it, and we are the gateway to Ailsa Craig, in that if you want to go to Ailsa Craig, it's pretty much most of the time from Girvan that you go to it. I know that further down the road they do a little bit of touring as well, but if we can really utilize that natural asset on our doorstep, it could really put Girvan back on the map as to this kind of unique selling point that we have. So that's what we're working towards with the feasibility project. And if the feasibility project comes out and says, great, yeah, that's absolutely possible to do, then the next step will obviously be looking for bigger pots of funding to move that project forward.
Great, thank you. That's really interesting, actually. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good, thanks. Pauline.
Yeah, I'll make a general comment, if you don't mind, Douglas, and then a specific comment, perhaps. General comment, and it's lovely to be here tonight, and it's lovely to hear from the projects themselves, because it wouldn't have been possible without people actually stepping up to say we're going to try and mobilise a community to do something around community-led tourism. And I want to pay a particular tribute to Artemis, who's been a great supporter of the work that we've done, and she believed in the ambition we had. Thank you, Artemis. Douglas, for your support as well, and also the work, I think, of working with Creetown has been critical to us being able to deliver this. And that partnership approach has been replicated at the local level in terms of the areas we've chosen. And it's just so nice for us, because Sarah and I spent a long time, Sarah in particular, writing a Green Book business case to get the investment to do this. And it's just so delightful for us then to see and hear from what's actually happened, and the ambition and the support of volunteers in the areas as well. So I'd like to thank all of you for your input to making this happen. The main point, the other point about Artemis made about, I think, about volunteers is a really important one, because we rely too much on volunteer effort, and people are, you know, genuinely good with their time and all of that, but I think we have to manage expectations on what can be achieved through volunteer effort. And therefore we argued in our Green Book business case, and Sarah will attest to this, for investment to go both to Creetown to use their expertise to support, but also to make sure that there was investment for a Zanne or a Rachel or a somebody to actually step in and be the public face and drive forward the ambitions of the project. That's really important, because volunteer effort's brilliant, and there's a value to that. But however, we do need to take investment to make this happen, and I think that's one of the recommendations we'll put back the way, because the idea of the proof of concept projects was always to have a strategic input, to make some recommendations back to the key agencies that can make this happen. So let's together learn the lessons from this and show the impact of it. So for me, it's marvellous. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Pauline. Thanks, Pauline. Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Douglas. I just wanted to reiterate that, really. I wanted to just, well, first of all, pay tribute to the volunteers that joined the two steering groups and met every fortnight, you know, almost religiously for nearly a year, and identified the priorities as they saw them. And don't forget that the steering group were drawn from the communities, you know, public sector, private sector, individuals who are just passionate about their towns. So, you know, they did a fantastic job, but the difficulty, as we've just touched on, is delivering the projects by volunteers. You know, people have got their own jobs, their own businesses, all the rest of it. They'd put so much time into it, but the delivery of the projects was going to be a problem. So when both groups agreed to spend some of their money from the project in bringing on project support in the shape of Rachel and Zanne, and obviously I worked with them, you know, at that stage, all of a sudden things started to happen fast, because you've got paid people who are dedicated to delivering those projects and obviously reporting back to the steering group and working with the steering group. But, you know, the amount of progress that has been made since both Zanne and Rachel came on board, is massive, and that project has happened, you know, that progress has happened over the last 6 months or so. So I just wanted to reiterate that, really, without both Rachel and Zanne, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are with these amazing projects that both towns have identified, and you know, the specific to each town. So yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that, really, guys.
That's grand. Thank you, Chris. Lee.
Hi everyone. Just a question for a double question actually for all of the speakers, but also maybe something for wider discussion. And I'm guessing investment and project support will come into this based on the answers so far. My question to speakers is, what is the biggest barrier to more community-led tourism, and what would enable more successful community-led tourism in your areas?
Rachel, do you want to take that? I'm going to put you on the spot. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes. Yeah, I suppose there hasn't really been time for us to see what could be done, but what is going to be done in Angus is actually looking at all the different towns in Angus and maybe trying to build this up through Angus Tourism Cooperative, and also money that's come in from Angus Council to fund this. So this is something that, because it's been seen to be working really well in Angus, in one of the towns, is certainly going to be something that's going to be taken forward. So I don't know, that's maybe not answering your question, because I still think it's quite early to assess how easy it is or how difficult it is. It's going to take a while to work out, you know, how sustainable everything is and what will move on next, because it also depends on what funding can be acquired for further projects and also for further project support. But certainly I think that the other towns will be hugely benefiting from what's gone in to Brechin and Angus. I don't know, Zanne, I don't know how you feel from your perspective.
Yeah, no, I think we're in a slightly different position too. So I think you've touched on funding. Obviously, is always going to be an issue. It's just going to be an issue for everyone forever, it feels like. But I see another, I wouldn't call it a barrier, but I see a really key piece of this is that we are so fortunate because we had a Creetown and we had a SENScot on our side. And without that support and that guidance and that advice, I'm not sure that we would be where we are right now as well. So it's that whole network of support. And I actually have to say as well that I know Tom's here tonight, but the Community Wealth Building Department in South Ayrshire Council has also been really intrinsic to moving things forward for us and really supportive of us. So having those key supporters, it's not a barrier, but it's a necessity for these projects to be successful as well.
Thanks, Zanne. Anyone else is welcome to speak, but Sarah, I'm going to put you on the spot a wee bit, if that's all right. And I think you're right, Zanne. It's really important to say that, you know, that everybody's doing a lot of backslapping and well done tonight. But I mean, we can see that the stuff that SENScot and Creetown have both done have been really just astonishing. And my colleague Linda, who's helped to coordinate the events this week, doesn't know Sarah so well as I know. See, I know your bad point, Sarah, but she doesn't yet. And you know, Linda was just saying, it's just absolutely amazed at what you pulled off in the last couple of weeks, just to bring these things together and to get speakers for all these events. And it's a test to SENScot's experience and skills. So yeah, I would just really echo that, Zanne. So Sarah, do you know what? I'm going to come back to you. I see your hand, Norm, as well. But Sarah, as you've got an overview of the project, do you want to have a wee response to that in terms of barriers and success factors, opportunities? And Lee, you've stolen my last slide, so I'm a bit annoyed. I'm now that's my structure gone.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's been very clear, lack of resource, financial resource and time is a huge issue for communities. Stepping outside of these two pilot areas, talking about other communities, I think lack of access to expertise and support is a real barrier. If you're not in the tourism industry and you don't speak the language of the tourism industry, then it's quite a big hurdle to get over, and it's quite difficult to know where to go for support. And I think one of the key ones as well is a lack of a voice for the community sector in the tourism industry. So that means if you've got a voice, you can build understanding with key agencies, and that community is valued and the needs of community is valued. So I see that as one of the big stumbling points, and that really those three things are the basis of this whole piece of work. It's about changing the way that happens. So changing the way that resources come to communities, changing the way communities can access expertise and support, and making sure that there is a platform and a voice for communities. So I think that's probably the key areas.
Really interesting. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, that's interesting, Sarah. Thank you. Norma.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to come in a little bit on the barriers. In Angus, we've been very fortunate to be working on community-led tourism for a long time, be it in decades ago when we had our Glenesk Folk Museum, and many communities have, but Angus were part of a transnational cooperation project with Belgium and Romania based around community-led tourism. Our part had to come to a quick halt due to Brexit, but we're still working with the Belgians and Romanians, although volunteering now because it is unpaid now. And the lasting legacy of these projects, in fact, well, I think the Brechin were chosen on the back of being part of that journey. When we were talking about it, at that point, when they took the projects back to ground level, it was based around very strategic thinking from a lady called Anna Pollock, who is heavily involved in regenerative tourism, and I'm sure many of you will know of Anna. And trying to get the message across to communities on the ground that they were part of that was, it was difficult because the language that was being used people didn't recognise themselves as being involved in tourism. So it took a long time, community engagement wise, to get people on board, to see that tourism, as they say around here, is Aberdeen's business. And all of these people are already doing things. You're talking, so that's one of them. It was this concept of community-led tourism and what is it, but it's already happening. Communities have been doing it for decades, and it's just now getting kind of parceled up in a different kind of language. There is a network of people who are working on this. I recently completed a social enterprise academy on communities leading in tourism. There are still future cohorts that are going ahead with that, and out of that has come a community tourism network called SCOTO, SCOTO, and maybe Linda or Sarah might be able to put that in the chat there. So there are like-minded people out there who are doing exactly what you're doing. They're working in their communities. There's a huge network of support between one another, and it's about, there's no point in us in Angus going on these learning journeys and not sharing that knowledge and experience. So there are people there, if you want to reach out to them, that are maybe a little bit further along the journey than others, and that are totally and completely there to support one another. So yeah, and I'm very happy to chat about that with anyone. I think one of the things that I struggle with when I'm communicating maybe between our tourism cooperative members and perhaps Visit Scotland or our local authority, for example, people on the ground that are involved in community-led tourism by accident, and there are quite a lot of them, they don't want to be seen as the tourism industry. Industry is the wrong word to use. It's getting the language and getting the people in our communities on the ground that are delivering things to feel comfortable. And as you say, not talking the lingo and not talking in, a language which is based around the tourism industry. So a few barriers, but lots and lots of positivity, I think, and great opportunities, because the whole thing of community-led tourism is that huge authentic connection between the visitor and the host community. And when you get that right, that's what people go and tell one another about, and they come back and they bring their friends and family. And yeah, it makes for better communities and a much better visitor experience. So hats off to you all.
Great. Thank you, Norma. Thanks, Ruby. You've got your hand up, and I think I'm just watching the time. I've only got 3 slides in terms of giving you a feel about the impact and evaluation so far, but I wanted not to miss that opportunity to give you some of that detail. So, Ruby, if we can take you, and then I'll start to share those slides again, if that's okay with folks.
Thank you very much. I just wanted a quick question. It's actually for either you or Sarah. Why was Brechin and Girvan picked? Is that? I was just wondering that, if it's a short possible answer for yourself.
Right, Sarah.
Yep, I can answer that one. So this goes back to, I guess, our relationship with government. We had been working for quite some time with a national steering group, so made up of a variety of different members, so representatives from the Scottish Government Tourism Team, from Scottish Enterprise, from HIE, from Visit Scotland, from Scottish Tourism Alliance, and what have you. And we had been working with them for some time around this subject, bouncing ideas around. And then we submitted a proposal to the government, and then COVID hit, and suddenly we were all very busy with other things. Then what happened is that we held an event, much like we've held an event this week, but with many more sessions. It was a very intense week, and tourism kept coming out as a subject. And so I picked up the phone to government and said, we can't let this slide, it's actually really important. And they said, forgot to tell you, we've got some money for you. Can you write a Green Book business case? Now, the nature of government is that they need you to spend money by a certain time. And so what our initial proposal had included was almost an opportunity, almost a competition, I guess, for communities to bid in and to be chosen that way. But we just didn't have that time. So what we had to go with was communities where we could see potential for growth, where we had good relationships on the ground with grassroots organisations, where we had good relationships with the public sector as well. And so after a lot of conversations, that really is why we chose the 2 areas, because we had those relationships on the ground. I think I would have liked to do it very differently, but obviously tonight, hearing how things have gone, and I wouldn't say that now because it's gone fantastically, but I think if given my time again, and if we managed to do something else again, or somebody else did, I think it would be nice to roll it out a little bit differently, because an awful lot of time was spent right at the beginning of that project. Chris and Andrew spent an awful lot of time working with the groups to build the groups. And I think that if we had gone for a different system where groups bid in, then that initial group work probably would have happened already. But it just gave us a different experience, and definitely still a worthwhile experience. I don't know if you want to mention anything there, Chris, about that experience or not. I know that you've got a cold though, so I don't want to take on this.
Yeah, no, I'm quite happy. If I start to cough, I'll switch off. But no, you're absolutely right, Sarah. So much of the time was spent in the early parts of the project, identifying people and connecting with people in the various towns. And obviously with COVID, it was impossible to go to the towns and actually walk around and get to talk to people, so it was all done, you know, via Zoom and phone calls. So there was a lot of time, and actually in some ways you sort of almost forcing a group of people to connect and be something that hasn't really grown organically, if you know what I mean. So yeah, so I think it took time for both steering groups to really connect and start to work together and understand each other. Obviously, some people knew each other and knew how they worked. So yeah, it was a little bit like that. I think if you'd have done it in a different way, and you had a group that were already connected and thinking along the same lines, then we could have saved quite a lot of time. But as you say, it's just a different experience, and obviously COVID created an even different experience with it, you know. So and I just think it actually just shows how well the groups have done, you know, to actually have got as far as we have, or as they have, you know. So yeah,
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to just share that. I've only got 3 slides, so not too long, and just give you a feel about where we've got to so far with the impact assessment. Right. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I suppose we're going to do a whole range. This is really just a very, very brief snapshot of where things are, and we'll do a range of different things. So I think what we've heard tonight is how amazing things have gone well with the groups and all the projects that have been developed and funding that's been secured and feasibility studies done. And as Chris lastly said there about the groups forming and beginning to develop themselves as a group. And we'll certainly be recording that and asking some of the things that Lee raised about success factors and barriers and so on. So those things will be really crucial. A couple of the other perspectives that I'll maybe focus on a bit more over the next 3 slides is about, this was also about, not just about the groups and about, it's not just about project development, but it's about the wider community. So we're also, in addition, speaking to a whole range of stakeholders and also just the wider local community. So we did a baseline report last September, October time, and we're just right in the midst of repeating that at the moment to be finished by the end of March. So it's a good way through, but it's still live at the moment and we're still taking feedback. So these are not, the ones on the left are the ones on the right are not final figures. So just to give you a feel, and I'll rattle through some of these, but I'll just give you a feel about where things are. And there's a massive amount of data. This is just a few, I've chosen a few salient points just to give you a feel. So when we did the initial baseline, we found that 55% of the wider community in Girvan, starting with Girvan, 55% of the wider community were either completely unaware or unsure about what community-led tourism was. Almost as expected. You wouldn't expect the wider community to really know about that. And after all the work and publicity and Facebook and so on and project development, right now, and as I say, this is live, it may change, but right now in Girvan, only 28% were unaware or unsure. So significant increase in awareness across the community about community-led tourism and the projects specifically in those towns, which is good. And the next couple might be quite interesting, because initially when we asked people, even whether or not you've heard of it, do you think that community-led tourism is basically a good idea? At that point, 94% of people just ticked yes. Now, that's hard to beat. But now that we're going through the second phase, and I often find this, that it's a wee bit counterintuitive. So at the moment, we're down from 94% to 84% being supportive. But when we look at the qualitative feedback, that's a lot of people saying, well, now I know what it is, I'm engaged my brain and I'm just not sure, and how did it work? And people have some questions around sustainability and involvement and things like that. 84% still quite high, but it indicates a bit of more engagement, intelligent engagement. Originally, there was a whole range of different potential outcomes, just one of which was 80% of people felt that tourists would bring jobs and wealth to the local area. And also that's dropped a little bit. So we'll see how that pans out when the research finishes. But again, it's a lot of people more engaging. They now know what it is, and they're now engaging much more intelligently in terms of what that means and how it would work in the community. In terms of people agreeing that the communities come together to promote tourism, that's really increased quite significantly. So 25% disagreed with that, and now only 13% disagreed. So quite high levels of people actually thinking that's a really good thing for bringing the community together. So a range of different outcomes there, and we're seeing slightly different figures as time goes by. In Brechin, slightly different figures, but maybe a similar direction of travel. Brechin, 65% were unaware or unsure, and now only 39% are unaware or unsure. So again, higher levels of people know what's happening. So it's obviously the communications have been quite successful. Similarly, again, 97% of people thought, yeah, great, brilliant idea. But now people are engaging in a bit more detail. That's dropped down to 82%. So people have got a lot more questions about how things, and that's good. That's about engagement, and it's about people becoming thinking much more personally about how things affect them. 46% of community respondents agreed that tourism would bring wealth to the area, but that's actually gone up. So in Brechin, 77% feel that's really good and will bring wealth to the area. And in terms of communities coming together to promote tourism, again, that's really increased. So 36% disagreed, but only 19% disagreed at the moment. And this is still live, so we'll still see how that pans out. Last slide, just to give you a feel about the two areas. We're doing interviews with a whole range of different stakeholders, regionally and nationally. That's still underway at the moment. Just still not lots of them booked up for this week and next week, so that's still live. Just to give you a few examples there, 46% of some of the important stakeholders were very aware of community-led tourism at that point. 38% of them had some knowledge and 15% of them were completely unaware. When we're talking to stakeholders just now, it seems that less people seem very aware, but much more people seem slightly aware. So there's a bit of a slight increase in awareness. When the people who were detailed, maybe that's dropped very slightly, which might be about the kind of stakeholders that we were speaking to early on, who maybe were a bit more engaged directly. So we'll tease that out and see how that goes. In terms of starting to look at the barriers and challenges and so on, stakeholders at that point considered funding and lack of visitor facilities being the most significant challenge, identical in Brechin. So there's a whole list of things that we asked people about. And similarly, again, and particularly in Girvan, comments highlighting concern over dependence on volunteers, which we've seen here. So there's some similarities across those areas. 87% of stakeholders would recommend Girvan as a good place to live, and 61% in Brechin. So we'll look at that and comparisons around that. Just finally, 2/3 of stakeholders felt that collaboration did occur locally. We'll begin to see what changes there might be there as we analyse some of that. Picking up some of Sarah's point there, that's been hindered by time constraints, communication, maybe lots of voices around. So fairly high levels of people feel that collaboration does happen, but there's certainly some barriers around that. So the impact assessment and evaluation is still ongoing at the moment, but hopefully that gives you a wee bit of a feel as to where things go. So I'm not going to break into small groups because I've only got 1 minute. So that's my poor timekeeping. So sorry, everyone. So that's kind of where we are in terms of impact assessment and evaluation. It's been really interesting that certainly you can see tonight that the actual success on the ground has been very high, but we'll also be tracking about the views of stakeholders, both regionally and nationally, but also that wider community, and getting more people right across the community who don't run a tourism business, aren't involved in the community, maybe don't even volunteer, but it's quite important for us to just understand the whole wider community and people feeling that community-led tourism, Girvan and Brechin and in other areas going forward is part of their culture, and they feel buy-in to that. So seeing some of the changes and responses to that will be quite interesting. We'll be writing that up towards the end of the month. I'm absolutely sure with SENScot's open source ethos that it will be, it's certainly their report, and I'm absolutely sure it'll be published widely, so you'll see those figures soon. Sorry, we're up to time, but I'm not in any rush. So I'm happy to open up for any questions or thoughts around the impact assessment if anybody does have anything.
Chris has got a hand up. Douglas.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no, sorry. Actually, what I wanted to do was actually just bring in John Gill, who has joined us from Caledonian Rail in Brechin. And it's an amazing example of a community-led tourism initiative. And you know, I don't know whether you want to say a few words, John, just a little bit about what you guys do, because it is fantastic. I mean, it's all done by volunteers. So yeah, would you mind, John?
Yes, of course. It's highly unusual for me to sit this quietly this long anyway in normal circumstances. Biting my tongue for a change. I think it was one of the questions I was going to ask, and I'm conscious we're a little bit short of time actually. Let me go back to afterwards if we get time, is the sustainability of it, how the sort of resilience and how do you make these things survive the long term? And it's quite difficult when you've got funding sources that are 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, you know, quite short term, to put a longer term strategy in place. And I think one of the reasons of the success of the railway, so the railway was formed in Brechin at closure of British Rail in 1981. So the group was formed a couple of years before that in 1979. And the reason it's lasted this long is not so much because those people necessarily want to set up a tourist event, but because they were just interested in railways and preservation. And it, as Chris said, it's always been a sort of volunteer run thing. We have, like the groups here have discussed earlier, discussed on a number of occasions whether we should bring somebody in, you know, paid either full-time or part-time, and we have in the past had positions that's done that. We've been lucky from a skill point of view that we've got quite a lot of different, you know, all the volunteers have different day jobs, obviously, and that's allowed us to bring in quite a lot of skilled resource and experience from other industries as well, not just tourism. So the railway's sort of grown, I wouldn't say with any particular plan over the last 40 years. It's something we're trying to work on at the moment, is sort of put a longer term strategy together and how that can help bring other groups together as well, because Angus, particularly tourism wise, looking beyond the Brechin remit, and I was touched on earlier as well, is made up of a lot of sort of half day, 1 day tourist events. You don't generally come to Angus for a 2 week holiday going, I'm going to go to that thing for 2 weeks. There's not an Alton Towers or you've got everything in one place in London. There's lots of sort of disparate little things that are in their own right absolutely fantastic things, but it's about how do we tie these things together. And as a railway, we've got a sort of central area where we arguably used to do it more in the past, and we're trying to look at that again, at how we engage with other groups and try and provide a sort of central location to link that together. Places like the National Trust site House have done, Montrose Basin. The local whisky distilleries just reopened relatively recently, and the visitor centre they're investing heavily in. There's the Playhouse in Montrose. So there's a lot of individual things that we'd like to try and pull together. But like I say, a lot of where we've got to has been more chance than plan, I think would be a way to put it. But we have seen, I mean, we've continued to see growth. Post-COVID was interesting. We were very fortunate through COVID, partly because actually we didn't have any paid staff, that the volunteers were able to keep maintaining what we were doing. We have, again, we suffer a little bit from not having very clear objectives, exactly what we're about. We're a museum, we're a tourist thing, are we a place where people can come and get work experience? There's a whole load of different bits that we try to satisfy, again, largely by accident. So one of the big challenges for us is how do we try and get a bit more clarity on what we want to achieve over the next sort of 10 to 20 years. From our particular point, a lot of where we make our money to pay for the maintenance of the site is around large sort of one-off events. So we have a day out with Thomas events we run during the summer. We have Polar Express, which we ran for the first time last year. We have gin train events where we do sort of gin sampling and things. And they're kind of special events things, and they bring a lot of tourists in. You know, Polar Express, particularly last year, brought a lot of tourism in from way outside the area. We had a lot of people from England, from Orkney, Shetland, Inverness, sort of Central Belt, with very little publicity. And the biggest challenge for us this year, and actually last year and previous years, has been the sort of accommodation and sort of other supporting things, trying to tie that together a bit. So a lot of people, when they decide whether to come or not, will look around and see what accommodation's like. If they can't find any, they'll just go somewhere else, you know, because they are only coming to us for a day or 2 days, you know, they're less likely to be there for a week. So I think potentially, you know, we lose out a little bit from not being able to communicate as well as we could about the options for accommodation for other things that are on. Just, you know, the simple things you expect and just automatically, you know, it's worse if you're in the area because it's not things you rely on. You go home at night and you get to go to bed and you have your dinner. You don't tend to think quite so much about where you would stay in a hotel or you know, where you might go out for food if you were just coming up for the day. So there's some of the things we were talking about. Like I say, I think the biggest challenge for community-led tourism from our side, and like I say, we've been lucky because we're enthusiast driven, is how to make it sustainable, how to stop it becoming another thing that's got a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of drive behind it for a small number of years and then just tails off because there isn't the sustainability behind it. But I guess would be my parting comment. I'm happy, yeah, if anyone's got questions or anything, I'm happy to. I like talking, so I better shut up.
That's grand. Thank you, John. No, sorry, I meant to bring you in early. That's my again.
No, it's quite all right. I
was
sometimes can manage to bite my tongue for more than 5
No, it's okay. You're 35 minutes ago. You're probably thinking, when's my time coming? So,
no, at all.
Just briefly, I know time's short, and I'll wind up in the next 10 seconds, I promise, because everybody will be wanting their tea. But just picking up John's point about, how is this getting rolled out? It's just to let you know that we have also been asked to do what was originally called a scoping exercise. It's really a list of case studies of other examples of community-led tourism. And again, thanks to Sarah for putting the word around. And actually, we just looked in our books and had an astonishing list of community-led tourism that I'd never really called it that. But once you look, there was about a dozen. And Sarah circulated around the partners. I'm sure a lot of you had those emails, and we've had really quite a large number of examples coming through. So we're going to do little case studies on that. I've got a tourism consultant supporting us with that. So it's not just Girvan and Brechin. I mean, this is happening without any support, without any funding, all over the place. So I think shining a light on it, and the position statement that Sarah did recently, I think is going to really help to just boost that up. So I suppose it's just saying, in terms of rolling it out, we're very aware that this is all over the place, but once you give it a name, it also starts sprouting up as well. So it's brilliant what Girvan and Brechin have done, but it's in a context of a movement. I think certainly we're seeing that. So really encouraging stuff, I think, for us. Sorry, we're now 8 minutes over time, so I do apologise, everyone. Is there any final thoughts you wanted to chip in, Sarah, before we finished up?
Just Lee's had his hand up for a wee while, so I don't know if you want.
Sorry, Lee, is that an old hand or a new hand?
It's a new hand, but I don't want to hold anyone up. But if I could, 60 seconds, if I may.
No, you've got 80 seconds.
80. Oh, very generous, Douglas. Thank you very much. I hope it's okay to ask this. Really great to see what the projects are doing. As one or two of you know, I'm involved in a project researching how community-led tourism can support a regenerative approach, I can't even say it at this time of night, to destination development. We're really keen to share the results with any interested parties, and as part of it, we've got a short survey to identify how we build and how we really take community-led tourism forward. I appreciate that some of you may be surveyed out, but here in the presentations and the discussions tonight, I'd be really keen to capture some of your views on this, just so that the input is not just from agencies and from industry, but from a local community level as well. It's a 10-minute survey, and I was wondering if it's appropriate and if anyone's willing to do it, whether it be okay to send it on this link.
I'm sure it would be fine. Yeah, I'm sure it would be fine. And I say that because I chaired a session today with Tom Henderson and his lovely colleague from South Ayrshire, and we made the links between the importance of community-led tourism in relation to community wealth building. And I think that was a really interesting session, because we have to see this as not something in isolation. It's actually about economic regeneration, it's about social capital, it's about all the well-being economy. So I think your survey will be welcome.
That's great. I'll post it on here if that's all right.
Lee, if you want to email it to me as well, we can stick it on social media too.
That would be amazing, Sarah. Thank you so much, everyone, because this stuff is too good not to be included and shared with the results.
Happy to share some of our research as well with you if that's useful.
Great, thanks. I'll drop you a wee line, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. We'll be happy we can put it on our social media and stuff as well and circulate it, so the tourism-based beneficiaries that we work with, happy to do that if that would help.
Great, thanks so much, everyone.
Any final thoughts?
No, we're just hungry, Douglas.
I know, you will be. Well, this is 11 minutes late. That's not bad. I've been half an hour late before now. So apologies for my poor chairing, but thank you very much, everybody, for coming in. That was just really positive. Nice.